right? Like,
Okay, so we are recording here. Okay. So we are nowhere even close to. Let's get that one in. Okay. Wow, what prescription do you have?
0.5 and 5.
Okay, everyone, go ahead, get your eyeballs in. Okay, so this one, let's see. First off, we'll find this portion. Now that's fine. Okay, so if that's a vessel, Caitlin, right here, you got a couple of things going on, right?
It looks like it's mostly occluded with hyphal elements.
Yep.
So I'm wondering if this is hyalohyphomycosis, such as Aspergillus or Fusarium.
Yeah, they're about that size, right? And they don't have a lot of visible cell wall, so that would be a reasonable thought. The other thing in the background, see all that basophilic stuff? So you got a dead vessel with no neutrophils in sight and that stuff. So what else do you have?
Could you?
Yeah, exactly. So ecthyma gangrenosum. So this is, I think you can make them out reasonably well there. So that is ecthyma gangrenosum concurrent with fungal. So you have fungal and Pseudomonas sepsis concurrence. Equals, did not actually equal death, although it was bilateral above the knee amputation. In this particular case. So, the Pseudomonas and fungus was actually primary invasive in the tissue, and then that just plows through the vessels with extensive necrosis and ensuing sepsis.
Is that what invasive Pseudomonas would look like?
Exactly. So, like the leg ulcer that you guys have all seen with, rapidly, so unexplained rapid progression of an existing leg ulcer can be primary Pseudomonas invasive, and it looks just like ecthyma gangrenosum histologically, so exactly like that. Okay.
Well, looks like you have fungus surrounded by immunoglobulins.
Yeah, so you would refer to that as a eumycetoma, and you can see those balloon-like swellings, chlamydospores. So that usually means a black mold. In this case, it was actually M. canis mycetoma. This is, I don't know if you guys have heard the story already, but little girl in foster care, mom a drug addict, passed around family to family, and has adopted a little mangy kitten that she's hiding in her room and sleeping with, and has M. canis mycetoma as a result. Kind of sad. Okay.
So, looks like we have some hyperkeratosis. Specific. And then I think I can see some like organisms in there. So, looks like they're running maybe north now.
They're running north-south, which is often a clue to
Candida.
Candida. What color is Candida?
Kind
Kinda
color?
Colorless. And this, can you make out a little bit of brown?
Sure. Yeah.
So if those are brown hyphae in a fairly thick
I think like tinea nigra.
tinea nigra, exactly. So one of the clues is look at where you are anatomically. You know, it's not really a Candida site, it's a volar acral site.
So,
Tell me about the corneum right over here.
pretty basket weave, a little bit hyperkeratotic.
So-
Eosinophilic band above the granular layer.
Yeah, so you have a basket weave, and below that a compact eosinophilic, which can be a clue to
Tinea.
tinea. Exactly. And then you have parakeratosis, which would equal scale. So all scale is parakeratotic except for furfuraceous scale of tinea versicolor. And so, you know, you'd look, and right in this zone is where you're most likely to find the hyphae. So that is the basket weave ortho on top of compact red is a helpful clue for Candida.
So we have a pretty deep punch biopsy. I'm looking for. It kind of reminds me of pop beads, those little circular components.
Do you see any making continuous beads though?
Not quite.
And you have round to oval, and then you have little germ tubes coming out of them focally. So is this more fungal or more yeast?
More yeast.
Yeah, exactly. So yeast with germ tubes, and this was Candida sepsis. So basically a Candida abscess, you're just starting with neutrophils here. But, you know, you're in the subcutaneous tissue, and there's just this mass of Candida organisms. So that was one of our patients here not that long ago. Okay, let's go. Okay, so David, where do you think you are first off?
Kind of deep dermis subcu. There's a lot of vessels.
Lung,
Long.
alveoli.
Okay.
So, you know, so we're not in skin, but the organisms look the same regardless of where you
It's
are.
dermis. Alright. So, some kind of lung nodule consolidation. It's got some foamy histios, or foamy cytoplasm. Oh, there's some intracellular guys there. Kind of a thick wall. You can think about like histoplasmosis maybe, or
So
almost kind of-
histo has a pseudocapsule, tend to be little dots, not hollow center. So little gray dots, no hollow center, pseudocapsule, very evenly spaced. In a cavitary lung lesion, histo is going to be hyphae, not yeast. So in vessel and in cavitary lung lesion, hyphal for histo. Everywhere else, yeast, and they're tiny little gray dots, no hollow center. This looks like hollow center things, right? And it does have a little capsular space around it, right? That's not a refractile wall. The wall is the thing on the inside, and they're hollow. And are they all the same, or are they pleomorphic, different sizes and shapes?
Pleomorphic.
Yeah.
Like crypto.
Exactly. So that's Cryptococcus. So Cryptococcus, you make out that it's not a thick refractile cell wall, it's a capsule, and it's a pleomorphic yeast. So pleomorphic hollow yeast, round to oval, vary in size and shape, capsule. The more granulomatous, the less capsule. So this doesn't have a whole lot of capsule to it because there's granuloma there, right? So the more granulomatous reaction, the less capsule you get in crypto. But they're always going to be hollow pleomorphic yeast.
Looks like a maybe a mucosal site.
And what direction are the hyphae going?
North south.
So more likely Candida, especially when you have little yeast as well as germ tubes in there. Tinea swims, Candida dives. I'm not sure we have enough visible on that one. Skip that. Leave it.
Feo?
So Feo, and given that you have kind of a cystic space here in tissue, probably phaeomycotic cyst, which is primary implantation.
Usually like splinter or something.
Yeah, like a splinter and indolent, and you cut it out, versus bipolaris sepsis, which is your immunosuppressed and it's widespread sepsis, and you need systemic therapy. So phaeomycotic cyst tends to be indolent. Bipolaris sepsis tends to be anything but indolent. And bipolaris you saw this morning in your shower because it's common mildew.
Right.
So.
It's like granular, panicytic granular style with there is a pigment look like phaeohyphomycosis.
So phaeohyphomycosis if hyphal, and if just round little spores.
It could be chromomycosis.
Chromo, and you can see the fission of the spore right there where it's dividing. So you get fission of the spores in chromomycosis, and then in this case you have some hyphae too. So you are correct. This is phaeohyphomycosis and chromomycosis. Some fungi can do. Some of the black molds can do both, right? If they're hyphal, it's pheo. If they're spore, then it's chromo.
Lobo, they kind of look like they're lining up.
So they look about the size of Lobo. They kind of look like they're lining up. Tell me about the skin.
Scalp.
They're pretty small, right? And they're all telogen. So, and there's a big, looks similar to Smaz muscle, but really, really thick. So it's probably not human, right? It's probably a hairy animal whose coat does not continue to grow, but has a seasonal growth and then stays the same length because they're all telogen. Either it's a very hairy dolphin, or more likely a monkey in this case. So that's African histo. But African histo and lobo, they're about the same size. You can get some pop beads in African histo. It's just on culture, it has a kinulate macroconidia. Look, it grows as histo in culture, whereas lobo you typically can't grow in culture. So histo actually grows pretty easily. Okay. Next time you're called upon to treat a monkey, you'll be about it.
Or a histo.
That's unfortunately blistering, so we lost that one. So let's get something different here. Find the tissue. Go. A little furfuraceous scale. So it's clearly coming off like a scale, but it's not parakeratotic. There's only one scale like that that's furfuraceous. You have Zedia meatballs, and whereas most fungi are pretty much transparent, they don't take up much stain. TV is gray. It takes up a lot of stain and appears gray in H&E staining. So, tinea, you have trouble seeing the hyphae because they are so pale staining, and TV, you have no trouble at all. Picks up lots of stain, appears gray. You have these little clusters of meatballs and the little short, you can call them spaghetti, but they're more like ziti. And are they easy to grow in culture? What do you have to add? Olive oil. What else would you add to ziti and meatballs, right? And where do you get TV? You get it in greasy areas of tissue. When you get Pityrosporum sepsis, it's always related to an intralipid hyperall catheter. So it needs the lipid for growth. So catheter sepsis, if it's hyperall, is commonly Pityrosporum because it grows on that lipid. It's already there in the skin, and then you're infusing lipid, and so you get Pityrosporum sepsis. So kind of a massive hyperkeratosis. And let's see if we can find. There we go. No shortage of organisms here, right? Okay, so
Yeah, it looks like hyphal structures,
all hyphal or hyphae and yeast?
hyphae and yeast,
Hyphae and yeast in what direction of the hyphae?
north-south,
So what are you thinking?
Canada.
Candida, exactly. Mix of hyphae and yeast. The hyphal structure is going north-south. That's pretty good for candidiasis. Right? Candidiasis with that kind of massive hyperkeratosis, you think of chronic mucocutaneous candidiasis. This is not fungal at all. I happen to know this patient, which is the only reason I know what it is. We need to relabel that. That is iododerma.
Okay.
Acute iododerma. Save that one so it's usable. Okay. And let's get. Okay. Let's do this guy. So first off, where do you think you are?
Let's go.
Probably scalp. And what's going on this scalp?
There are little organisms within the hair shaft.
Yeah, chains of spores within the hair shaft. Any on the outside?
No.
So what this is?
And endothrix?
Endothrix. And compared to the blood cells, are the spores same size or much smaller?
Smaller.
I wouldn't say much smaller though. So this is actually, you need to see spores to get a sense for what's large and what's
Okay.
small, but this is large spore.
Okay.
Okay, small spore are tiny, tiny little things, about a quarter that size. So that's a large spore endothrix. What's your typical large spore endothrix?
Not sure.
So tonsurans and violatium are the two. So tonsurans being overwhelmingly. Tonsurans was not a North American fungus. It came from Africa. And who gets tonsurans? Black kids, right? So it came from Africa, tends overwhelmingly African Americans, tends to be either a boggy carrion or more commonly hair loss and a subtle sebderm-like scale. So if you have a fungus that is not adapted to live in you, you get a lot of inflammation. If this is an African fungus and you have an African population, they live in fair symbiosis and it doesn't create that much inflammation. You get hair loss, looks more sebdermish, it's not that inflammatory. That's your most common presentation for tonsurans. And then, Adwini was more inflammatory, but that hasn't been around since the 40s. That was your North American fungus back in the day.
Do you like the KOH scrape? If you suspect it, scrape it or just do the culture. Or you do the,
so there are
do the wet gauze.
There are a couple of ways to do it. I'm a wet gauze guy because if you do the wet gauze and you let the kid rub it himself, then the kid's fine with it. The kid rubs lightly and you just see the little broken hairs on the gauze. That's what you KOH and you never miss it. So I'm a wet gauze guy, but people have used other ways of doing it. Toothbrush, some of the kids object to the toothbrush. The wet gauze, it's cool. You put it on their hand first, see how soft and cool it is. Here, you rub it a little bit on your scalp. It'll make it feel better. And then you get your sample. You can also take a Sabrode plate and just have the kid gently press it to his own scalp. It's usually better that than dodging the kid trying to get a KOH on their scalp. The other great thing that I learned from Adelaide Hebert at the meeting, when you have a kid who won't stop crying when you come into the office, you just say, bye. The kid thinks the visit's over, and then you talk to the parents and you do whatever you need to do. Yeah. Okay.
So there are several giant cells down there.
And let's see if we can find. You always look, abscess or giant cells is where you're going to look, where you're most likely to find organism. Let's try that. There we go. So abscess, even better than giant cell. Right?
Maybe some red hollow. swellings. Or am I seeing the wrong thing?
A lot of them are gray, not hollow.
Okay.
See that big gray thing,
I do.
like an eyeball?
Maybe like a soccer ball as well. At the end.
Let's look around and see if we see morula-like structures. So what are you thinking?
Protothecus.
Yeah, exactly. So Prototheca is an algae, kind of lives right at the junction of algae and fungus. Primitive organism, lives on tree slime in the south. So states where they grow telephone poles and paper, that's where, so Georgia, Alabama, South Carolina, Florida, any of the states that grow telephone poles is where workers get Prototheca infections. It's commonly an Olecranon bursitis, or skin plus Olecranon plus bursitis, and also with HIV in the South, you see Prototheca sepsis too. So. All the telephone pole states.
Are they pine?
Yeah, usually it's pine. Pine lumber,
Yeah.
pulp to be.
Yeah, it looks like there's some organism within like the empty hair shed.
Yeah.
They look to be hyphal.
And they look to be hyphal. And where are you, probably, given that that's Demodex mite?
Infundibulum?
Yeah, infundibulum of hair, but it may even be face
Oh, okay.
with all
yeah.
the Demodex. And so, probably a tinea faciae with Miyake's folliculitis. So, quote, Miyake's granuloma, there's usually no granuloma. It's usually it's just fungal folliculitis. So Miyake's fungal folliculitis, you can see some neutrophils here. It's a neutrophilic suppurative folliculitis from the fungus. Common where topical steroids have been used or under occlusion. And okay, so that's hair shaft. That's what's left of the hair. Where are the spores? Inside or outside?
They're outside, so some ectothrix.
So it's a large spore ectothrix. What's your large spore ectothrix? Your usual one. No, that's small spore ecto.
Okay.
So that's fluorescent. So cats and dogs fight outside are your small spore ecto that are fluorescent. Canis, Odwini, Ferruginium, which is Asia with bamboo hyphae, and Distortum, which is an Australian type of Canis. Those are your small spore ectothrix fluorescent fungi. This is a large spore ectothrix. It's arms or beard, and it's cattle farmers. So it's usually a male cattle farmer, carrion-like thing in the beard, large spore ectothrix. When they're working with the cattle, whether they're milking or whatever they're doing, they're often pressing their head against the cattle when they're up against it, and it's, an inflammatory carrion in the beard is the most common thing you'll see for, T. varicosum. Splits into the auger, although we don't do those on the desktop anymore. And large spore ectothrix, which you will see. So that's in your scope of practice, is large spore ectothrix, cattle, varicosum. one's a little tough unless you've seen it in lung where it looks exactly like this. See all these little dark things? They look almost silvery and they look like little crushed ping pong balls. That's what pneumocystis looks like. So, pneumocystis carinii, although they've probably renamed it, they're in the habit of renaming things, is, often immunosuppressed again, and most commonly lung, but you will see it in skin, and that's what it looks like. So, now you've seen it.